amended passed.
7. Members' motion encouraging the return of the industrial sector for development to make Hong Kong's industries more diversified. Members who wish to speak in the motion debate will please press the request to speak button. I now call upon Mr. Chung Kwok-pan to speak and move the motion. Mr. Chung Kwok-pan. President, I move that the motion as printed on the agenda be passed. President, we know that in the 80s and 90s, our industry started to relocate to the north of Hong Kong, and not much has left in Hong Kong. Many members representing the industrial sector talk about the need to have a policy on industries in Hong Kong, but over the years there has been none on the part of the government. A few years ago, if I were to propose attracting the return of the industrial sector, many people will think that I'm silly. But things have, at the time is different now. Many factories in the Pearl River Delta are facing problems such as the appreciation of renminbi, labor shortage, and so on. Many industrialists do intend to return to Hong Kong for development. We know costs in Hong Kong is not low. So if they are in the business of manufacturing low-value products, they won't return. They would go to the Southeast Asia and Vietnam. Those who intend to return will be high-value-added products or products involving a high technology content. The consumption power on the mainland is huge. We have attracted many mainland tourists to Hong Kong, and they buy products manufactured in Hong Kong, products made in Hong Kong, whether we're talking about food items, medicines, fashion, jewelry, and electronic products. These are industries that can help to build a brand effect for Hong Kong. So I hope the government will introduce policy to support the return of high value-added industry back to Hong Kong. Take the textile industries as an example. Hundreds of manufacturers have told me that they would like to relocate some of the production lines back to Hong Kong. Of course, they will be in the business of manufacturing high-value fashion items such as fur and fashion. Well, businessmen can always do the sums. On the mainland, the average wage of a technical staff is the equivalent of $5,000 to $6,000. Many people are unaware of this. During the recent MPC and CPPCC meetings, it was announced that there's a plan to double the GDP and per capita GDP by 2020 over the current level. So in the coming 6 years, we can expect production costs on the mainland to be doubled. So instead of $6,000 Hong Kong dollars, it will become more than $10,000 in 6 years. So our labor cost is no longer the biggest obstacle. And many Hong Kong products, as I've said, can enter the mainland market. If we can make the best use of the zero tariff arrangement under CEPA for Hong Kong products, for products made in Hong Kong, and we can access the mainland market with zero tariff. That's the advantage. For example, for those who manufacture fur. The fur is imported from North Europe. If they export this, they have to pay 20% tariff. And if they are manufactured in Hong Kong, there's no need to pay the tariff, and the difference will be sufficient to pay for the wage difference between the mainland and Hong Kong. If we can relocate or encourage the return of some industries back to Hong Kong, well, the production amount value is $250 billion last year. It's 7% of our GDP. If we can have the high value-added parts located in Hong Kong, we can have a benefit of $25 billion. And I haven't counted other potential return needs, such as watch and clocks, jewelry, and toys. If they can come back to Hong Kong, it will certainly be beneficial to Hong Kong's development. Many people may ask this question: where can you find the land? Well, in the short term, we don't need a lot of industrial sites because these are returned industries. Maybe just need 10 or 10,000 square feet or so. They won't be employing hundreds of employees like operations on the mainland. So in the short term, there's no great demand on industrial sites. But for the longer term, we need the government to tackle the meeting of industrial sites demands. In the recent policy address, it's mentioned that some industrial sites will be rezoned for residential uses. This is how we should look at the issue. It's important to have residential development, but we need to strike a balance because there are other needs for land. I have mentioned to Mr. Greg So and asked about possible support if Hong Kong industries are going to return to Hong Kong, and he was unsure whether there would be sufficient industrial land to support these industries. So I put the same question to Mr. Paul Chan. He said it was negotiable, but whatever the government can do will be dependent on the industrial policy. So it's back to your court, Mr. So. So we have to consider how to revitalize the existing 3 industrial estates, or perhaps we should need a 4th one very soon. The SAR government is also keen in promoting the creative industries. Other countries have developed and mature creative industries. For example, London in the UK and New York in the USA, they are now also advocating local production. And that is to say, creative industries will need the support of local industries. In 2008, when Mr. Obama ran for the presidency, it was the time when the financial turmoil had hit. In his campaign, he said, we should not rely just on the financial services sector or the virtual economy to promote the U.S. economy. Once he assumed office, President Obama immediately devised policies to revitalize industries. For example, there's a policy to reintroduce industries in certain area. And they have this program for jobs to return to U.S. in 2012. For those who bring jobs back to U.S., they would be entitled to tax incentives. So if we encourage the industry to come back, that there will be a lot of job opportunities. We can diversify the types of employment. Now the Hong Kong industries are rather monotonous in variety. Even Professor Joseph Sung, the Vice Chancellor of CUHK, said that there is not much choice for the engineering graduates. In the past, the government gave a lot of support to the financial services sector. Of course, it's been a success. It's the tertiary sector in economic terms. In the recent policy address, a fund with the amount of $500 million will be set up to look into possible development of the fishery and agricultural sector. It's the primary sector in economic terms. So we have the primary and the tertiary, the sectors developed in Hong Kong, but not the middle one, the secondary one, that is to say the industrial sector. Ideally, we should have both the primary, secondary, and tertiary sectors well developed in Hong Kong. The return of industries can diversify our economy and promote our economy and create job opportunities and expand the scope of job opportunities so that there's more upward mobility opportunities for young people. Therefore, I propose that the government come up with suitable policy to help them return.
I now propose the question to you, and that is that the motion moved by the Honourable Chung Kwok-pan be passed. 4 members wish to move amendments to this motion. The Council will now proceed to a joint debate on the motion and the 4 amendments. I will first call upon Andrew Leung to speak, to be followed by Sin Chung-kai, Kenneth Leung, and Chan Yuen-han respectively, but they may not move amendments at this stage. The Honourable Andrew Leung. President, first of all, I thank Mr. Chung Kwok-pan for moving the motion, so we have an opportunity to discuss industrial development in Hong Kong. I have moved an amendment because his motion does not emphasize high value-added industries. I have therefore put in the amendment so that the administration will roll out various measures in order to attract high value-added industries to again take root in Hong Kong. In February, we heard that the PA does include policies to support commercial industrial development so as to maintain Hong Kong's competitiveness. However, the coverage is very small. To attract these industries to come back, I believe we need a comprehensive industrial policy, including the supply of land, promotion of creativity, training of manpower, as well as support for high value-added industries, before we can have a buoyant development of Hong Kong industries. Now I'd like to make certain proposals for the consideration of the administration. In September, the World Economic Forum released its report. Apart from Hong Kong, the other countries coming within the first 10 places did put emphasis on industries, and Hong Kong cannot just rely on its financial sector and tourism. We should again have local industries which have high value addedness. We must diversify our economy so that we can create an economy of scale and so that job opportunities will be created. I hope the administration will provide more support to the industry so our economic structure is not inclined just to 1 or 2 sectors. Many industries with high technology content are on the mainland, and the operators have told me that operating costs are going up and the operating environment is not as friendly. These people would like to upgrade and transform and come back to Hong Kong. I have told the administration many times that the administration must promote a comprehensive and stable industrial policy and find land for the building of factories so that these people can come back from product design to the development of products and production lines. All that can come back and we can create a cluster effect. And more will come back as a result. Then we can have an impact so that Hong Kong's industrial development can kickstart again. But the administration must provide enough industrial land before these operators will come back to take root in Hong Kong. However, the deficiency in land has always been a barrier. Industrial estates are always fully occupied, and the empty, flatted factories in the urban area cannot satisfy the demand of green industries. I hope there will be the 4th industrial estate as soon as possible, and also the leasing of land in existing industrial estates should be relaxed. We hope also that there will be this land policy where apart from housing, we must look at the development of local industries. When you assign land for industrial use, you must make the best use of the border restricted area so that people from the mainland and Hong Kong can both involve themselves in innovative industries, and the Pearl River Delta can become a transport hub. In January, the Bloomberg magazine ranked South Korea, Japan, and then Singapore, and then Taiwan. They all rank within 10, but we are 27th or 2 places behind the mainland. So we should waste no time in developing innovative and creative industries. We are the international investment center and also a commercial hub. We have intellectual property protection and we have comprehensive laws. So we should promote Hong Kong as the hub for innovation and creativity in the region. I support the original motion in that Hong Kong should have a Made in Hong Kong branding in the original motion, but then the Hong Kong Federation of Industries also go for Made by Hong Kong, because in 1999 we cooperated with the MIT, which issued a book to say we can have Made by Hong Kong, because some of the processes do not necessarily have to be done in Hong Kong or made in Hong Kong. I think we should go for Made by Hong Kong in order to make it easier for the translators of LegCo. The Made by Hong Kong branding is already a confirmation of quality. In fact, only the high value added processes can take place in Hong Kong, and by that we mean made by Hong Kong instead of having all the processes done in Hong Kong. We can go for pharmaceutical products and high-end printing, watches and jewelry, etc., etc. All these can take place in Hong Kong. As long as we can add in Hong Kong elements, and then we can already fetch a higher price than the same products in mainland. But because of high wages and other costs, labor-intensive and low technology industries should not take place in Hong Kong. So we should actually focus on product design, technology development, and also patent registration, etc. We can make use of the PLD as the industrial manufacturing base. We can make use of high technology and then complement it with traditional industries so that we can promote Hong Kong products. And there must be incentives to attract these people to come back to Hong Kong. One of the ways is to allow them to invest more on innovation and technology. On the 28th of February, in the CI panel, we looked at the relevant funding. Until the end of December, the rebate scheme has paid out 1.8 million in all. Say, for example, if the income was expenditure was 6 million, the expended amount was 4.2 million, while 1.8 million represented the rebate. But then that is already a very big figure for SMEs, and they have told us that since the threshold is high and the return rate is only 30%, they are not exactly interested in the rebate scheme. I hope, therefore, that you can adopt the tax concession to the rate of 300% proposed by the Hong Kong FI on many occasions, so that we can have a higher value added element. To support local production and high value added products, you must also refine your procurement policy. The government should play by example and buy local products. You must allow local entrepreneurs to be given this help. We have the advantages here in order to develop high-tech industries. Since that is also the direction taken by industries in Southeast Asia, we must not tie our own hands. We must take the opportunity to create more talents so we can go up another rung in our economic development. Vocational training is how we should train up the personnel for industries, because courses will be designed in such a way that they can complement the development of our economy. Trainees will be useful to the industries, and as a result, they will be able to find a job once they graduate. This is also the way to guarantee a supply of continuous manpower to the industry. We also have the qualifications framework, which is now widely recognized. But you must expand the scope of the QF. You must set indicators to encourage more sectors to provide training so that we can enhance the capabilities of the different sectors in Hong Kong. Mr. Lee Ka-shing said in an interview that Hong Kong financed enterprises are not as competitive as before. Hong Kong is a very competitive society, and in order to tackle our economic problems, you must not only look at the symptoms, but the root of the problem. You must enhance our long-term competitiveness and create a bigger pie to provide more opportunities. We have a comprehensive IP protection system, and product safety is also our advantage. So we should go for high-value added, non-labor intensive new industries. But in the past, the administration has not given enough support to high-end industries. We do not have enough land, and also now there is a succession gap in terms of manpower. There is also the high land premium policy, and also wages are always escalating. So Hong Kong industries have shrunk over the years. I hope there will be more policies to complement industrial policy development in Hong Kong. There must be tax concessions, and also we must go for upgrading and transformation so that Hong Kong manufacturers will be happy to come back to Hong Kong, so we can expand the Hong Kong economy and there will be stable development of society. BPA supports the original motion and all the amendments. Thank you.
Mr. Sin Chung-kai, thank you, Mr. President. I would like to thank Mr. Chung Kwok-pan for moving this motion debate so as to encourage the return of the industries. In Mr. Chung's original motion, I think he would like to write on the effect of the brand effect of Made in Hong Kong. We agree. Mr. Andrew Leung is saying that we should take away the reference to the brand effect of Made in Hong Kong. We cannot agree. Mr. Andrew Leung tried to explain about the study carried out by the Hong Kong Federation of Industries. That was 17 years ago, and that's in relation to the difference between Made in Hong Kong and Made by Hong Kong. 17 years have already passed. We should think again the value of Made in Hong Kong. Many products are currently being manufactured in China, but in the recent years, a lot of Chinese products have also become the subject matter of counterfeiting, and there has also been some concern about the food safety, and therefore against such a background, the brand effect of Made in Hong Kong does have potential. If our industrial sector is not going to grab this opportunity, it will be most regrettable. Therefore, I am moving an amendment. In my amendment, I'm merely trying to enrich the original motion, and I try to come up with some specific measures. Say, for example, revitalizing the industrial estates so as to induce the return of the industrial sector. We hope that there will be more land. I hope that Mr. So and Mr. Chen will work together. They shouldn't pass the buck around. We also hope that the administration will review the Innovation and Technology Fund, inject capital into the funds to support the development of innovation and technology industries. Data centers and also cloud computing would have a lot of potential for further development in Hong Kong. There's also one other industry that should be considered, and that is the so-called the green industries. I'm not going to go into the details at this moment. The Democratic Party will support Mr. Kenneth Leung's amendment. In his amendment, Kenneth would like to supplement what is addressed in Mr. Andrew Leung's point about high-tech, and as well as low pollution and lower requirement for site area. I think all such should be given our support. We should look into such matters. Well, in fact, under the Donald Tsang administration, towards the end of his term, he was criticized by the Premier for having a narrow base of industries. So hastily he put together a development plan to develop the 6 industries in which we have an advantage. Now C.Y. Leung tried to upset that agenda, turn over that agenda, so it seems that there are some ups and downs. Now it appears to me that for C.Y. Leung, I think he has been preaching more than practicing when it comes to supporting industrial development. For Mr. Kenneth Leung's amendment, I think that can take care of Andrew Leung's amendment. Of course, in Andrew Leung's amendment, he also refers to manpower training. In Ms. Chan Yuen-han's amendment, that can be taken care of. But then for Andrew Leung's amendment, he will take away the reference to the brand effect of Made in Hong Kong. So we have to vote against Andrew Leung's amendment while we support the amendments to be moved by the other 3 members. Mr. President, in Hong Kong, the manufacturing industry only accounts for around 1.6% of our GDP only. And among the various industries, of course, I just wonder whether, we have a similar percentage for egg and fish. It's even lower, less than 1%. But still, we need to broaden our industries. We shouldn't just set our eyes on tourism, financial services, and property development. Now, the industrialists have always been telling us that the cost of production is on the high side. But in fact, if you go to the Scandinavian countries, they still have a lot of industries. Say, for example, Sweden, Germany. If you look at their labor wages, if you look at their capital or the business cost in an overall sense, the cost is high, but still they have very good industrial development. The government has a duty to discharge, and I think our industries must also do their part. In the past, we have relied on the low the low production cost, in particular the cheap land and the low labor cost. But we overlooked the development of industries which would rely more on technology. When the labor cost is no longer low, when the land cost is no longer low, then the industrial development will be hindered. Today, for our industrial setup, our manufacturing industry is only accounting for 1.6% of the GDP only. 30 years ago, when we were young, I think at its peak, we have got over 1 million workers in the manufacturing industry. But today, I think the number of manufacturing workers in Hong Kong is very small. We have to identify those industries which have got potential for development, like data centers, green industries, as referred to in my amendment. They all require support from the government. Secretary, understand that you are responsible for commerce and economic development plus IT. I think for us to embrace the green industries or recycling industries, I think you need to complement the work of Mr. K.S. Wong, the Secretary for the Environment. It will be difficult to address the point about price setting. For many green industries, they need help. This is because the potential value cannot be capitalized easily. Well, for litter or for waste, I think some of it is still valuable, but will require government support. Green industries should be regarded as part of the industrial sector. We require the help of the Environment Bureau as well as the Commerce and Economic Development Bureau. Mr. President, the DP hopes that the government will diversify the industrial development of Hong Kong. We are looking forward to the government's review of the Innovation and Technology Fund. We hope that there will be more long-term targets. Understand that the fund will soon be depleted. It is high time for the administration to carry out some studies so as to plan for our future development in the long term so that we can work harder in terms of high-tech development. Thank you.
Mr. Kenneth Leung. President, I thank Mr. Chung for his motion. I want to say that we do support Mr. Chung's motion, but I want to say that I would like to talk about certain industries in particular. Now, we in Hong Kong have been relying on the financial services industry, the real estate sector. It's true that the government has put forward proposals to develop other industries. For example, industries where Hong Kong has an advantage. But then there hasn't been any comprehensive or concrete support. Government has only been providing funding, and there is a lack of land use planning in this regard, and as a result, we haven't been able to attract these industries to be set up in Hong Kong. And is it that all industries can return to Hong Kong? I think the answer is no. I think there are a few conditions to comply with: low pollution, high value addedness, and also less land intensive industries. And also we need industries that can help upgrade the quality of our talents. So if industries that meet these criteria can return to Hong Kong, we'll be able to attract overseas investments. And we'll be able to facilitate our transformation into a knowledge-based economy. But at the moment, we are only relying on financial services industries, the real estate sector, and we'll be quickly losing our competitiveness. So concerning the criteria that I've mentioned, low pollution, less land intensive, and so on and so forth, and I think the first industry that we can look at is pharmaceutical production and certification. Now concerning the production of Western medicine products in Hong Kong, most of such products are for domestic consumption only. I understand that we would like to have clinical phase 1 clinical testing of overseas pharmaceutical products in Hong Kong. But then I understand that in Hong Kong, most of these clinical tests belong to phase 3 or phase 4, not phase 1. And so will not be competitive enough. And that's why we need to establish our certification system. We also need to nurture talents. There is a medical and health research fund in Hong Kong. But then look at Singapore. We can see that we are lagging far behind Singapore in the development of the pharmaceutical industry. In fact, since the year 2000, Singapore has been offering tax incentives and matching subsidies to encourage international pharmaceutical firms to invest in Singapore. And many international pharmaceutical firms have set up their Asian Pacific base in Singapore. Pfizer, Glaxo, Novartis, almost all the Western medicine brands that we are familiar with. They've almost all of them have set up their Asian Pacific headquarters in Singapore. And as a result, in respect of biotechnology and pharmaceutical products, it has become the industry which has attracted the largest growth in FDI from 2002 to 2008 with regard to biochemistry and biomedicine industries. The amount increased from 3.8 Singaporean dollars to 10.6 billion Singaporean dollars. And as at early 2013, the biomedicine industry in Singapore accounted for
25.5% of its GDP. Singapore is at the same time a financial services center, but then the biomedicine industry accounts for about 25% of its GDP. And in 2013, the biomedicine industry for the first time overtook the electronics industry, although the electronics industry is still very prosperous in Singapore. So we should make use of our inherent advantages. We should make use of the conditions here. We should try to make Hong Kong the clinical testing base and certification base for international pharmaceutical firms. And also such exports will make our export value stable. And I think at this stage, there is a lot of room for development of this industry, and the government should continue to support the development of both Western medicine and Chinese medicine in Hong Kong. President, the second industry that I would like to go into a bit more detail is fashion design and manufacturing. According to the CNS department, in 2007, that was not too long ago, the value was 42 billion. But then in 2012, it dropped very significantly to $2.9 billion. And so you can see that these traditional industries are really struggling to survive. They face a lot of operational difficulties. Previously, there were big factories in Hong Kong, and then the factories moved northwards. And you know, fashion is about branding. And because the factories moved northwards, we didn't really have too many talents. It's true that the government has been helping designers carry out their overseas promotion work. But then for budding designers, overseas buyers, manufacturers, we do not have the platform for branding of fashion. We have Milan, New York, Paris, London. Why can't we have the Hong Kong brand? According to the global fashion industry growth in emerging markets, according to this report, Singapore and India have become the two major Asian economies or countries with well-developed fashion design and manufacturing industries. In Hong Kong, of course, cost is a difficulty or a problem. But then our local designers, in fact, are keeping abreast of international trends. I think the government should provide some subventions or subsidies. For example, there should also be enhanced support, the tripartite platform, and also there should be enhanced training for local designers, and also local we should try to nurture local designers. We're not talking about mass production of fashion. We're talking about high-end fashion. And I believe Mr. Chung Kwok-pan would agree with me. And there should be funds set up to provide or encourage the provision of training for fashion designers. And we hope that high-end fashion industries can take root in Hong Kong, and we hope that the Hong Kong brand can shine in the fashion world. And I understand that eco-fashion is a world trend. And so there will be cooperation, or rather, in fact, we have a lot of such industries, and concerning Armani jeans, in the 90s, it started to use recycled materials to produce eco-fashion items. And if the brand, if we have the Hong Kong brand, and then with the eco fashion concept and government support, we'll be able to break new grounds. So with these remarks, I support Mr. Chung's motion, and I support all the amendments except Mr. Andrew Leung's amendment.
Ms. Chan Yuen-han. Thank you, Mr. President. On today's motion moved by Mr. Chung Kwok-pan to encourage the return of the industrial sector and the diversification of Hong Kong's industries, I'll accept all its contents as well as expressions because the motion has reflected the views of the FTU. We did visit these industries and companies and found that they did reflect the brand of Hong Kong. The secretary had been on a catwalk, as I understand. His administrative assistant told me that the secretary has attached importance to this issue. Well, every time the FTU was disappointed by the reaction of the government, together with the commercial and industrial sector, we already discussed the return of Hong Kong's industries 10 years ago. As Mr. Chung Kwok-pan said, costs on the mainland are high. This time it is emphasized that all sectors of the community should be stabilized by anti-corruption efforts. So this is an opportunity for us. Mr. President, I've been working with the labor sector for decades. In the 1980s, the manufacturing industries that have sustained millions of workers had been attracted to the mainland because of various incentives. That's why our industries moved to the mainland. Mr. Deng Xiaoping's economic reform had attracted quite a bit of capital back to the mainland. And then by the 1990s, all those who would like to go to the mainland had gone. And people told me that the situation was not good. And then we saw that many workers became jobless. Male and female workers faced the situation of losing factories and industry, so they became unemployed. In the past few evenings, when I had gatherings with the local residents, when we discussed manufacturing industries, I saw many hands because many of them were actually in the manufacturing industries. For the low-skilled workers, they could actually find ideal jobs in factories. The sewing workers were able to send their children overseas to further their studies, and now they've completed their studies and become professionals. Back then we had apprenticeship training as well as industrial schools. The students had become experts and bosses. Home-style factories or workshops had become big businesses. I witnessed quite a few such cases in Sanpo Kong. By the mid-1990s, we saw that we evolved from the manufacturing industry era to the financial services industry era. We had Lord Wilson and then Chris Patten. We already said that industries should be upgraded. The manufacturing industry should not disappear. We did have discussions with the commercial and industrial sectors. If our industries were to disappear, we would have a very wide wealth gap in society. The workers cannot move upwards on the social ladder. And then we have cross-generation poverty. How can we assist these people who have remained poor from generation to generation? The Secretary, Mr. So, should respond to this issue. Now we have an opportunity. 93% of our industries were manufacturing industries back in the 1980s. Now it dropped to 1.5%. Last year, we only got 104,000 manufacturing workers. Many enterprising young people felt frustrated. And then ever since we had the individual visit scheme, various trades and industries had been withering. Many workers told us that it's all right for them, but the rentals are high. Vincent Fang knows this. Many of them had risen to the very top echelon, like Toppy. But sometimes it's very difficult to find premises for retail outlets because they do need an outlet. The rentals are so high. I learned that rentals are now dropping. I feel very happy about that. If rentals are not to drop, there's no room for survival. We did some calculation. From 2003 to 2013, the rentals of Hong Kong had risen fourfold for the very shops in the business districts, and some even up to tenfold. C.Y. Leung mentioned that if just one industry is to prosper, all remaining industries would with that. C.Y. Leung did say that. So how are we going to assist the manufacturing industry? I fully agree with my colleagues who spoke just now. Just look at our neighboring jurisdictions. At the time of Dong No Zhang, he's unwilling to do that. He didn't want to intervene with the economy. But then he should insist on doing something. South Korea and Singapore are classical examples. After the Asia financial turmoil, South Korea walked out of the economic shadow. South Korea conducted a lot of studies, R&D projects. The electronic products are so popular now. Well, I won't mention the brand names. And then they developed the fashion industry. In our market, many people are buying garments from South Korea. The same has occurred to their cosmetic products. I did visit South Korea, and then back then Mr. Lau Chin-shek, chairman of the panel, led us on a duty visit. There was this whole building for those people with creativity to work for 9 months there. Anybody could be there. At that time, they had numerous such projects, such that there's huge room for development. Well, let me repeat, with those 9 months of training, if you don't have sufficient support at the lower levels, it won't work. I support Mr. Chung Kwok-pan's motion. Look at South Korea. The fashion and industries of South Korea are so influential. I won't mention Singapore. Well, Zhu Yuan of Taiwan failed because of various reasons. You cannot convince us just with simple expressions. The United States, the United Kingdom, highly developed jurisdictions also need industrial support from the government. I don't need to mention that. We say 4 major industries, 5 major industries, 6 major industries, and then gradually some industries were lost. That's rather funny. We do need industrial policies. And first and foremost, we must have industrial land sites. Otherwise, all our land sites will be eaten up by shopping centers, residential blocks, and so forth. So we must emphasize what Mr. Chung emphasizes. And then there should be tax concessions to provide tax incentives for R&D projects. We must have high value-added industries such that Hong Kong's manufacturing industry can survive. As for human resources, I have a lot to say, but I have to tell you a story. Many people, upon completing their studies, particularly those who had completed their design studies, had no opportunities for fashion shows, exhibitions, and so forth. Thank you, President.
主席，我今日嘅發言呢，
Mr. Frankie Yik,
事實上公
I speak to support Mr. Felix Chung's motion.
應該先
I'm sorry, Mr. Yik, I should first invite the Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development to speak first. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I thank Mr. Felix Chung for moving this motion for us to discuss the policies in Hong Kong's economic development and industrial development. The government has always attached importance to economic development. As the Chief Executive points out in this year's policy address, Hong Kong needs sustained economic growth to address issues such as poverty, housing, and aging society, environmental protection, and upward mobility of our young people. The Chief Executive has emphasized the key policy philosophy of economic development for the purpose of solving the long-standing social problems. And developing the economy is the first of the 5 key policy areas of the government. The government thinks that as far as economic development is concerned, the government should play a more active role. So we adopt the attitude of being appropriately proactive. We have proposed a number of initiatives to promote and support economic development. In the Policy Address 2013, the Chief Executive already emphasized that the industrial development must be widened and deepened. We must leverage on our existing advantages and increase turnover and increase the diversity of industries. We must also develop emerging industries. This year's policy address has put forward over 10 suggestions and directions on developing various industries. You can see the commitment and resolve in diversifying industries in Hong Kong. Mr. Felix Chung's motion talks about encouraging the return of the industrial sector. I believe members also understand that land resources are valuable, and industries that require high land resources and intensive labor are not conducive to creating quality jobs and the long-term economic development in Hong Kong. The traditional industries should move towards high technology, high value addedness in order to achieve higher cost effectiveness and maintain our edge. And the good business environment nowadays is built on the concerting effort of the various sectors of the community. Hong Kong government will continue to be forward-looking and be strategic in listening to the sector's views and develop new growth points. We'll also provide support for new business startups and SMEs and help them in nurturing talents to create a favorable business environment for the sustainable industrial development to improve people's livelihood.
Mr. Yik Chi-ming, you may speak now. President, I rise to speak in support of Mr. Chung Kwok-pan's motion. Industries are closely related to the transport and logistics sector. If there is an active industrial sector, of course, there's a greater demand on transport and logistics because the business will cover the warehouses, distribution and transport. And it would be a very good balancing force. Kwai Chung container terminal is handling 20 million TEUs, and the airport is handling 40,000 metric tons of air cargo. A lot of them has to do with the manufacturing activities in the Pearl River Delta. And through our ports, we also have an active entry port operation. But this line of business can easily be lost to other ports. If we have an industrial base in Hong Kong, the logistics will get a very good backup. Compared to other cities, we are better equipped. We have a professional forwarding industry, an efficient custom clearing service, and highly efficient and safe warehousing and distribution services, but other competitors are closing in. For example, Singapore would move to the west to another port in 2027, and the throughput will be doubled to 65 million TEUs annually, and Shanghai would improve their Waigaoqiao and other ports, container terminal ports, and Shenzhen would improve its capacity to 28 million TEUs annually. Guangzhou is developing Nansha. Our competitive edge is being eroded. If we don't make good preparation, our status as a logistics hub will be compromised. According to Lausanne, the Management Institute, which announced the rankings of different economies in 2013, the position of Hong Kong has dropped from the first to the third. So an alarm bell has been sounded for Hong Kong. So we'll continue to improve our competitive advantage. And as the C has said, we have to expand and strengthen our economy, and the return of industries will certainly enhance the base for our logistics sector. In the 80s, manufacturers relocate their industries to the north because of the low wages and tax incentives. At that time, the systems on the mainland were backward, and we became the gateway to the outside world as a matter of course. And we are a major entry port for PLD manufacturing activities. But through the reforms, the Pearl River Delta is now equipped with much better ports. And many commodities are shipped to overseas countries direct from mainland ports. And because of cost considerations, many products produced on the mainland are shipped to overseas destinations direct. And Shenzhen port is now the third busiest in the world, overtaking Hong Kong. We have to continue to expand the source of business for the logistics sector. If the Hong Kong manufacturing industries are resumed, we'll have more business covering the distribution and transportation of parts and so on and so forth. This is not the first time we mentioned this. Many of the manufacturing operations have been relocated to places outside Pearl River Delta or to Southeast Asia. We have our own advantages in that there are many famous Hong Kong brands. And since we are not competitive in terms of cost, those industries that choose returns should offer high-value added operations and products. And the U.S., Korea, and other places have launched initiatives to attract jobs back to their countries. And this is one of the major initiatives under the Obama administration to have jobs returned to U.S. And Caterpillar and other big operations such as General Motors have actually relocated some of their lines, assembly lines to the U.S. And the new Mac Pro computer is selling on the strength of assembled in the U.S. According to an opinion survey on branding perception, more consumers equate Hong Kong brands with innovation and modern design. And 70% are saying that they are willing to buy Hong Kong products at a premium price over the local counterparts. So to a certain extent, Hong Kong brands are welcome in the eyes of the consumer. If we have some incentives to attract some of the manufacturing operations back to Hong Kong, the Hong Kong brands will be even more attractive. And they will also provide an impetus for our trade and our logistics sector. In the long term, it's good for diversification of economic development. Mr. Winston Fan. President, more and more tourists are coming to Hong Kong to shop. It has become a controversial issue recently. Many people criticize these tourists in order to be popular or to gain votes. But they have not rationally analyzed and looked into the reason why so many mainland visitors choose to come to Hong Kong, and also whether there are opportunities to us. I believe many members may think that I just ignore people's pride and I just look at the commercial interests. Actually, mainland tourists have benefited the retail sector significantly, but I'm not just talking about the retail and wholesale sector. They benefit the entire economy. They bring business and employment to different economic sectors. We have full employment. It has a lot to do with the development of tourism. And the reason why things are somewhat chaotic is that when we open up tourism for individual visitors, we haven't planned properly. If our facilities have developed in tandem with the increasing number of tourists, people will not be so aggrieved, and our economic development, our social development will also be enhanced at the same time. Mainland tourists have come in large numbers to Hong Kong to shop. We have one opportunity yet to be fully explored, and that is the credibility of our retail market, Hong Kong brands, and the confidence inspired by the Made in Hong Kong label. From time to time, the Customs and Excise Department expose false goods and also the malpractices. But we have done our part to crack down on such malpractices. Some media have interviewed mainland visitors to ascertain why they would like to come to Hong Kong to shop. They invariably said they like Hong Kong brands, and they are more confident in the label Made in Hong Kong and products available in the Hong Kong market. We should transform this into an impetus for sustained development of economy. Many members and economists have criticized our economy as being too lopsided towards real estate and the financial sector. We have to diversify. This has always been what the Liberal Party is asking for. Made in Hong Kong and the Hong Kong brands are our advantage. We have been asking that we should facilitate or encourage industries with potential to return to Hong Kong because of cost constraints in terms of land and manpower. As Mr. Chung Kwok-pan has said, we can attract high value-added industries back to Hong Kong, or products with Hong Kong characteristics, such as traditional Chinese medicine. Well, I have mentioned this to the CEO on many occasions. Let's look at traditional Chinese medicine as an example. We have more than 400 TCM manufacturers with their own brands. Members can think of some of the brands easily if they are themselves consumers. But they are small-time operations. Some of them are, especially those producing ointment, TCM ointment. And in a few years' time, they may disappear, not because they do not enjoy any business. Many mainland tourists buy these products in large quantities. But the last administration introduced the GMP for regulating the TCM industry in Hong Kong. Oh, well, that's the right direction to go. But if you want to do a consultancy study to implement GMP, it costs a few $1 million. And for a plant, it's an investment of more than $10 million. How can SMEs be able to afford it? So I've told the administration and relevant departments this suggestion. How about building some standardized factory premises for these manufacturers? And the answer is, as expected, where can I find the land? Whenever the government introduces policies and measures to help some industries, members will ask how many jobs can be created, how much benefit can be reaped in terms of tax and so on and so forth. And they also criticize that we are left with only big corporations and nothing else. But basic economic theories tell us that when costs go up, SMEs will be squeezed out of the market. And now we have the minimum wage, and we have the demands for the introduction of a universal retirement protection scheme. All these added together would mean that SMEs will be excluded from the market. Well, local industries do not mind that they should be on their own feet and fight for their own cause, but we hoped the government would attach importance to the preservation and development of Hong Kong brands and the label made in Hong Kong. There should be a branding authority so that there's an official authentic certification of Hong Kong labels and Hong Kong brands, so that our advantages can be passed on to future generations. Thank you.
Mr. Wong Yok-man. Thank you, President. We are talking about encouraging industries to come back to Hong Kong, so we have a more diversified industry sector. Judging from the content of the motion, you know, no one would object, but it depends on what exactly you are talking about. Vincent Fang and industrial representatives would have their own views, and I myself, of course, am also of a certain view. In the end, there, of course, will be landslide support for the motion. It's just that the amendments speak on different aspects of the motion. So let us all speak out. Hong Kong has a unitary industrial sector. We depend on the real estate industry, and we are now seeing the harm done by the IVS. If we should allow local IT people to be given play for their talent, we must have our own industrial policy. But after reunification, Chinese officials and Hong Kong officials say we have to leverage on the advantages of the mainland, but they have not looked at the needs of Hong Kong. There are more constraints imposed by the mainland and Hong Kong. You're expanding the IVS. There is more social cost in terms of rental and transportation cost. And mainlanders are snatching up real estate in Hong Kong, and in the end, local industries have suffered. I have spoken our entire position within a minute, and this is also the true picture of Hong Kong nowadays. Hong Kong should not be a mercenary of the mainland. We should not be passive. We should gain our own position in the world. We must follow the example of Singapore and revive the secondary industry sector. C.H. Tung loves to compare Hong Kong to Singapore because he envied the Singaporean government, thinking that it was so effective. But of course, it is an autonomous government, and we should not follow suit. We have better freedom of expression in Hong Kong. But look at the past 8 to 10 years in Singapore and how their secondary industrial sector has developed. Just look at the information and you will know in Hong Kong, the secondary industry takes up 7.1% of GDP. We lag behind 10% in London, Paris, Tokyo, or 20% of Peking. In Singapore, the secondary industry takes up 27% of GDP and manufacturing sector 20%. Hong Kong manufacturing industry 1.6%. Singapore does not only rely on the financial sector and also the casino that has recently been built. This is not the real case. I like to spend some time on Singapore. Actually, I don't really like Singapore. But talking about the secondary industrial sector, they are way in front of us. The 4 pillars are petrochem, manufacturing of machinery and plant, and it is the third refinery and also a petrochemical center in the world. It is having a world position in terms of oil refinery. It is the only Asia city that is fixing prices for petrochemical products in Hong Kong. And in terms of semiconductors, it ranks only second to Hsinchu in Taiwan. It is the sixth in the world. Actually, one of the 500 strong semiconductors is also in Singapore. And biomedics is also an important industry. It takes up 2.3% of GDP. There are more than 10,000 people in biomedics. And many important public research organizations are in Singapore. They would look at molecular medical research and other research industries. So the list can go on. In terms of machinery production, it would include high precision solar industry and solar energy, and also vehicular parts, etc. It also has cement plants, etc., etc. If I go on, I will be accused of publicizing Singapore. When there was reform and opening up of the mainland, when Hong Kong industries moved northwards, Singapore adjusted and upgraded its industrial sector. I was talking to Singaporeans. They also envied us because the mainland is our hinterland, but Singapore can only rely on its own. Of course, you rely on the mainland, but then Singapore has survived on its own. It doesn't have that big economic hinterland that we have. You say we should leverage on the mainland, but we now lag behind Singapore. Because of time constraint, I cannot continue with the success list of Singapore. The secondary industry that takes up 27% of GDP of Singapore is as I pictured it. But Hong Kong cannot do it because in the 80s, UK was preparing Hong Kong to be returned to China, and strategically it did not concentrate on upgrading local industries. And in the end, those who have vested interest in Hong Kong were only short-sighted. And communists only came to take up our real estate development, and therefore Hong Kong will not be able to survive on its own. And the SALG talked about turning Hong Kong into a Chinese herbal hub and other hubs. I think that was mere words and lip service. And our per capita GDP is only 2/3 of that of Singapore. The two used to be very close together. So when you talk about Singapore, I'm really saddened. And we might not want to compare with Singapore in many other ways, but then 80% of Singaporeans live in government-subsidized housing. Whenever I go to Singapore, many Singaporeans would actually talk about the government instead of talking to me. We need a good social environment in order to develop the secondary industrial sector. I'm not an economic expert. I may not have very discerning views on the economy, but in Hong Kong we have good advantages, but then we are not going to be able to attract people to come because a lot of our values are now sliding, including air quality and freedom of speech, etc. Our time is up, Chairman. Mr. Tony Chair. Thank you, President. Recently, renminbi has appreciated, and operating costs have gone up on the mainland, and the quality of living has also heightened on the mainland. It used to be the world's manufacturing plant, but now compared to neighboring countries and cities where the operating cost is lower, now the advantages of the mainland have shrunk, and the economy is developing fast on the mainland, and Hong Kong businessmen also face more fierce competition, and operation is becoming more difficult as well. And some Hong Kong businessmen are considering or actually have decided to come back to Hong Kong. When enterprises choose the mainland or Hong Kong or other cities for that matter, very often the consideration is about different factors, including whether there are policies and measures in that place that would be conducive to their sustained development, as to whether enterprises can develop healthily and have sustained development. Apart from the enterprises' operation and management themselves, land, funding, information, legal system, manpower and protection of intellectual property, etc. All these are very major factors for consideration. Very often, these factors are directly affected by government policies. Today, the motion is to encourage industries to come back to Hong Kong. But what is meant by industry? And what is the understanding and views on industry between the administration and the sector? Do we have the same interpretation of what industry is? Many years ago, I have already questioned whether there is a clear definition of the industrial sector in the eyes of the administration. When times have changed, when the economic situation has changed, have you refined the definition of industrial sector and whether you have a forward-looking industrial policy? With regard to the traditional and old economy and what we meant by industry in that time, I think it was easier to define it. Very simply, we had heavy industries and light industries. But with the change of the times, when we have a new economic era, the definition on industry, as in the traditional sense, lags behind global development. Now we have a knowledge-based economy. Now we have the development of high value-added industries. If the administration cannot steer away from its feudal way of thinking so that you have a better policy that can complement the definition of knowledge-based economy and make the right policies and measures, even if there are more industries coming back and more creative industries, and no matter how hard the local sector improves itself and upgrades itself, I will still be worried that when we do not have resources and policies complementing the hard work, the administration will not be able to grasp the opportunity for industries to come back. And in the end, the industrial sector and the entire economic entity will not stand to gain. I hope the administration will wake up soon and please provide the right software and hardware complement so the industrial sector in Hong Kong can revive. As for patents and intellectual property and the protection for those, whether we have comprehensive policies for these are also factors for the industrial sector to consider whether they would like to develop in a certain place. Intellectual property is an important factor for asset management. It has a big impact on enterprise development. When the mainland economy is maturing, the entire industrial sector has a heightened awareness of intellectual property protection, especially copyright on the internet. It is also being respected. And since in terms of intellectual property protection on the mainland and Hong Kong, I think the environment is also improving. I hope the administration can work on a policy level to do publicity, education, training, and research and investigation, dissemination of information, and also law enforcement in order to increase protection for intellectual property so Hong Kong can become a regional hub for the trading of intellectual property or rights. The CED Bureau in the Secretary went to Switzerland in January this year in order to gain an understanding of the ICT development in that place. Actually, whether it be the society, people's livelihood, financial and economic development, Hong Kong and Switzerland are similar in many ways. But the biggest difference between Hong Kong and Switzerland is that Switzerland is a diversified industrial country. Its industrial structure also centers on services and also the financial sector. But then industries also take up a big enough proportion of the economy. High value added and high science content industries are very competitive in Switzerland, and they take up 30 to 40% of the GDP in Switzerland. But in Hong Kong, we only rest on our old laurels, and we only are inclined in developing the 4-pillar traditional industries. Recently, the administration talked about the 6 emerging industries where we have a clear advantage. But after a few years, what have we seen of that? I think we know better. At the beginning of this year, when CE was in Beijing, he said that he would, after the scrutiny of the budget in LegCo here, he would propose to LegCo to set up the Innovation and Technology Bureau. I hope society can complete discussion of that as soon as possible, and that the Council can complete the scrutiny of the relevant bill as soon as possible. If the administration can work fast and really go at full steam to set up the IT Bureau, I'm sure it will be a stimulus to Hong Kong's economy as well as Hong Kong's overall development. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Lo Kwok, thank you, Mr. President. To encourage the return of industries, I'm sure the majority of the citizens in Hong Kong would agree with it. This can improve our employment and our livelihood. Probably, views would only be divided into the choice of policy approaches. Since the 1980s and 1990s, with the opening up of the mainland economy, our production has moved northwards, and the Pearl River Delta region has become the production base of Hong Kong enterprises. So we have the shop front in Hong Kong, and we have the production base on the mainland. In the 1980s, I also took part in this process, and I saw for myself the changes brought about by the opening up and reform of the mainland economy. We have also upgraded and transformed our economy. It is mainly service-led. By 2012, service industries take up 93.1% of our GDP, and the employees account for 84% of the labor force. But still, we had 110,000 workers in the manufacturing industries, printing, garment, etc. The Pearl River Delta region is developing rapidly, and with the appreciation of the renminbi, the production costs and the operation costs on the mainland are going up, and the gap between that in Hong Kong and the mainland is narrowing. Well, some of the enterprises are moving the production base to more remote areas on the mainland, and while others are planning to move back to Hong Kong. I think you would agree with me that the return of industries isn't as simple as just replicating what we used to have. Times have changed, and people are getting more and more environmentally conscious. So we have to go after high value addedness and also low pollution. Therefore, for the industries to return, we need land, tax concessions, and also other policy support measures. At the same time, we need a lot of professional services, say, for example, R&D, testing and accreditation, green technologies, etc. Mr. President, time and again, I have urged the administration to do the following. While we have more land for housing, we must also set aside enough land for other purposes. Say, for example, support the commerce and industries with more land. I understand that we have got a new round of area assessment of industrial land in the territory. I think the government should be even more proactive. We should plan the uses of land appropriately. We must also provide the necessary facilities and utilities for the development of high-tech industries, environmentally friendly industries, and traditional industries. Moreover, to enhance the management levels as well as the skills, we have to carry out innovation continuously, in particular the applications. In this year's policy address, the administration has said that it would reconsider the idea to set up an Innovation and Technology Bureau. This is a positive response to our proposal. I hope that with the support of the LegCo and the community, we can set up the new bureau, that is Innovation and Technology Bureau. And then there can be more flexible measures to enhance investment. And then we can have data centers and we can have more mobile services. To encourage R&D among the enterprises, let me once again urge the administration to provide 2 times or 3 times the tax deduction allowance for R&D. And then the ITF should also revamp its application procedures. Mr. President, to encourage new industries, we mustn't forget education and grooming of talents. We should continue to have diversity in our education so that we have skilled workers at different levels. As far as the undergraduate programs and postgraduate programs, we should also enhance the standards. As stated in the policy address this year, we should give recognition to vocational training in our educational system. And then the VTC should be given resources to provide skills education as well as vocational training. And then we can provide the skilled labor that is required by the industries. Of course, we should work together with the industrial sector. We should provide more internship and more apprenticeship. Of course, we should also encourage the return of industries, not just as a single policy objective. We should look at land use, tax concession, specific subsidies, talents, as well as the collaboration between the government, the academia, as well as the business sector. Mr. President, I'm referring to the overall policies of the government when it comes to industries. Unfortunately, and regrettably, though the government has been saying that we would like to enhance our competitiveness and to promote a knowledge-based economy, but I think the government is only paying lip service. In this year's policy address, we haven't got any industrial policies that are balanced. And in fact, the government hasn't really taken on board our urgent issues. Say, for example, a more favorable business environment for SMEs, attracting more external investors, etc. I think the policy address doesn't have a lot to say about such matters. However, we all look forward to the government making improvements and spending money when it is needed. We should have an aggressive fiscal policy so as to encourage more investment. In the long term, we can enhance our competitiveness and there will be social upward mobility. For the various amendments proposed by members, basically I support them. Mr. President, so I speak. Mr. Wong Ting Kwong. Thank you, Mr. President. Industries used to be our pillar. There was a lot of development in the 1950s. In the 70s, it was at its peak. Textiles, watches have always been something that we could be proud of. In the 1980s, our economy developed in such a way that the production costs went up, and then there was the opening up and reform policies of the mainland, and it was working. And so a lot of entrepreneurs went northwards to produce their products so as to grab the business opportunity and to reduce the production costs. Up to 1996, from 1979, I think for the foreign direct investment on the mainland, saw 60% coming from Hong Kong. And in the case of Guangdong alone, 80%. For Pearl River Delta region, at its peak, 400,000 Hong Kong entrepreneurs were involved in manufacturing industries. But then there has been high-tech development, and labor costs and land costs have gone up drastically. I think the cost differential between the mainland and Hong Kong is getting smaller and smaller. Hong Kong is a free port. Most of the materials can be imported into Hong Kong free of tax. For the mainland, I think there is a complicated issue concerning the import of materials for processing, it's easy for them to be found to be engaged in irregularities. With the signing of CEPA and the supplements, I think we get more and more concessions. For our products to be exported to the mainland, we have zero tariff. And in fact, in this way, a lot of savings can be made in terms of reduced tax rate. And when it comes to the quality of our products, I think we enjoy a very good reputation worldwide. What is needed is to relocate the production base back to Hong Kong, and then we can ride on the advantage of our brand name. And then in terms of taxation in fact, with such measures in place, I'm sure many businessmen would like to relocate the production base back to Hong Kong. But of course, we know that for land, we are grossly in short supply, not even enough land for accommodation for living. Many industrial buildings have been rejuvenated, they have been put to creative use, and even the zoning has been rezoned as residential or business. So either you don't get land or you get a space, but it's just too expensive, scaring off the businesses. And we have also got a problem of labor shortage. Many SMEs find it difficult to employ staff. Wastage rate is on the high side. So given this background, it means that for industries which might be relocated back to Hong Kong, the bosses, the Hong Kong entrepreneurs, find that they're caught in a dilemma. I think we should encourage the return of industries. When they return back to Hong Kong, the capital and the technology or the skills will also be brought back to Hong Kong. It will greatly benefit Hong Kong. Now, we have been developing our service industries and the property sector at the expense of other industries. So our industrial base is very narrow. We must reverse the trend. We should have the real economy supporting us so as to reduce the risk of speculation, and we can free from the fluctuations brought about by the external economy. And we want to make sure that there is a greater degree of diversity. And then for entrepreneurs who choose to come back, I think they will become a very strong force, and we must attach a lot of importance to that. Now, the government must come up with a comprehensive industrial policy, and we must attract those who are engaged in creative industries. And we must have short-term, long-term, and medium-term development goals. And we should provide loans and other subsidies so as to help industrial development. For the entrepreneurs that come back to Hong Kong, I think we should have dedicated staff to take care of their needs, explain to them about the market situation, the regulatory regime, and try to match their needs. Of course, we need resources to do all this. If we haven't got sufficient land in Hong Kong, then it means that it will be difficult for us to say that we support industrial development. Therefore, the government must work harder to find more land. While we get land for housing, we should make sure that there is adequate land for industrial production, and there must be proper coordination. And then perhaps we should rezone certain sites as industrial again. And then labor shortage is also something very urgent. I think we should look at the characteristics of modern industries and encourage the tertiary institutions to provide the relevant courses so that we can nurture the right manpower. We should also change the wrong perception that you would never get rich if you are a manufacturing worker. The young should understand that there's a bright future waiting for them if they work hard. We can't afford to lack diversity. We must let industries flourish again, and we must attract the Hong Kong businessmen to come back to Hong Kong so that they become the driving force of our economy. For today's motion, I think we are once again reminded that we need to revitalize our industries, and it should have our support. Thank you.
Mr. Poon Siu Ping, President. In the 60s and the 70s, Hong Kong used to be a world-renowned manufacturing base. We have clothing, we had the clothing industry and other industries. And during this golden industrial era of Hong Kong, many Hong Kong people were employed by the manufacturing industries. And what followed was the opening up and reform of the mainland. As a result, many manufacturing industries moved northwards. And since then, Hong Kong has been relying more and more on the services industries. Today, let's look at the economic situation in Hong Kong. May I refer to the FS's latest budget speech? As at 2012, trade, logistics, financial services, tourism, and professional services, these are the 4 pillar industries. And over the past decade, the cumulative growth was 84%, higher than the overall economic growth during the period. 1.7 million people, or half of our working population, work in these industries, and these industries account for 60% of our GDP. So these industries are very important to our economy. The Guangdong province has also put forward slogans for economic development. They are of the view that they do not want to simply rely on labor-intensive industries. They want to switch to high-tech, high-value-added industries. Now, in fact, many Hong Kong manufacturers are facing the problem of increasing costs in the mainland, and they have been forced to move their factories to places where the operating costs are lower. And this is still the trend. Today's motion is about encouraging the return of the manufacturing industries so that we can have a more diversified economy and a more diversified industrial landscape. I think that will help to reduce economic fluctuations or volatilities. And also, young people will be able to get more jobs with prospects. I believe no one will object to the return of the industrial sector to Hong Kong. But then we can't put the clock back. We can't revert to the mode of operation prevalent in the 60s and the 70s of the last century. Hong Kong's economic development has passed that stage. If the industrial sector wants to stage a comeback, then there must be certain emphasis, and then of course there must be adequate support. We hope that the government can provide adequate policy support for industries in Hong Kong, so that industrial products manufactured in Hong Kong and Hong Kong brands can again lead the world. I think there are some industries which have potential for growth, but they are not related to the return of the industrial sector. And one of them is the green industries. Some time ago, there was a public outcry concerning the proposed extension of the landfills. Many people suggested that the environmental protection industries should be promoted, waste recovery and recycling should be encouraged. But then, the green industries, like other industries, face the same problem, and that is excessively high rentals. According to some companies, even though they can get subvention or subsidies under the Environment Fund, they still face great difficulties in identifying suitable premises or land. This is the main reason for local industries finding it so difficult to survive here. Government must give more policy support to our industries. Thank you. Ms. Anne Chang. Thank you, President. The Financial Secretary has recently told us to be very careful about spending our money in the public coffers. And of course, our expenditure is increasing. Our expenditure has increased and it's going to increase further. And so we are told that we should not spend too much, and less goodies should be handed out to the people of Hong Kong. In fact, some people are thinking that revenue should be increased, possibly by introducing new taxes. So the FAS, I think, is considering how to get more revenue from the public. For example, the water tariffs have not been increased for many years, and so maybe consideration should be given to increasing water tariffs. And then there is a suggestion that the sales tax be introduced. And so the FS is thinking of various ways and means to increase the government's revenue. Many members have already said that the competitiveness of our neighboring areas and countries has been increasing. And in these places or countries, industries still account for a large percentage of their GDPs. We used to be the head of the four small dragons, but it seems that industries are accounting for a lesser and less share of our GDP, maybe only 3% or even less. I don't have the most updated figure with me. So should we seriously consider whether we still want to see industrial development in Hong Kong? Premier Lee has just published his second working report, and one part of his report has to do with Hong Kong. And some people asked why the Premier in his report made no mention of a high degree of autonomy, and some were worried that Hong Kong had already lost the high degree of autonomy. But as some have explained, there is no need to repeat a high degree of autonomy every day. A high degree of autonomy is promised to Hong Kong people in the Basic Law, and there's no need to keep on repeating this promise. So Premier Lee did not talk about a high degree of autonomy. So what did he say? He told Hong Kong people to try to increase Hong Kong's competitiveness, and the same message was given to the people of Macau. So what is meant by Hong Kong's competitiveness, according to the Premier? How come the Premier has asked us to increase our competitiveness? This is because our competitiveness is dropping or lagging behind when we compare ourselves with neighboring places and countries. And the Premier is worried that we will not be competitive enough in the future when other places are increasing in competitiveness. Now, of course, today we are still competitive. We are still number one when compared with other mainland cities. But then our advantages may diminish, our competitiveness may drop. And so the Premier wants Hong Kong to increase its own competitiveness. We can't simply rely on tourism. And in fact, some people are talking about reducing the number of visitors or tourists to Hong Kong. And, the business sector is so worried about this suggestion. This is because tourism has become one of the main sources of Hong Kong's income. Do you know how many people are relying on the tourism industry for their livelihood? So we are worried. So you can see that the Premier is concerned about Hong Kong's competitiveness, and so we should be all the more concerned. We should make serious efforts to develop our own industries. The Secretary once said that there weren't enough sites. Now, Secretary, let me tell you that Singapore is also a very small place, and Singapore has done very well concerning the development of their industries, and Mr. Wong Yok Man has already said a lot about this. And in fact, our industrial sites are still there. They're still there. They haven't disappeared. Only a small number of industrial sites have been rezoned. Only a small number of industrial buildings have been pulled down. And in fact, we still have the industrial estates here in Hong Kong. In fact, I talked to Mr. Kwok-pan yesterday, and he said that in fact, Hong Kong would need a medicine or drug testing and certification center, but he said there weren't suitable sites. In fact, we have sites in Hong Kong, Secretary. You go to the industrial estates. How many of the companies are really carry out manufacturing activities? Now, in fact, many of the premises are now used for logistics and transport. And in fact, logistics and transport mean storage, warehousing. So we do have land. It is not true to say that we don't have land. And do you know why I'm saying this again and again? In the past, Hong Kong was very competitive. And that was because we had talents in different industries. Now, these talents are aging. And we haven't been nurturing their successors. But then in Hong Kong, we still have lots of design talents and also talents in marketing and sales. We have plenty of talented people. So let's try to increase the share of industries as part of our GDP. Please, Secretary, have a discussion with the CE, have a discussion within government to try to restore our industries.
Mr. Martin Liao. Mr. President, in recent times, our industries have been changing. Starting from the 1980s, those industries that had moved to the USA had moved northwards. And in recent years, as the operational and productive costs on the mainland have been rising, the differences between the mainland market and other jurisdictions was diminishing. And we've seen a lot more restrictions imposed by the mainland. The advantage of low costs is also diminishing. Many Hong Kong industries that had moved to the mainland had to make changes or even moved further down mainland China or moved to the Middle East. Given the competitiveness of Hong Kong at the moment and the ancillary support given by the government, today's motion has put forth a vision. Do we really have huge advantage to receive industries back to Hong Kong? Do we really have a competitive edge? Let's look back at our industrial development. In the 1980s, our industries were very prosperous. We're the first in the 4 small dragons of Asia. We focused on industries. From 1979 to 1996, 60% of the industrialists that went to China, mainland China, were from Hong Kong. And we had 400,000 workers on the mainland. And now we only have 70,000 industrial enterprises in the Pearl River Delta region. So time has changed. The past generation of industrialists are already aged. There were changes in the catering business and manufacturing industries. Processing industries have also withered. So the past era is gone. And in Hong Kong, our manufacturing industries have completely changed. For our traditional industries, garment and textile, watches, electronic products, etc., are still occupying topmost positions in the world. But then the production lines have already moved away from Hong Kong. But most of the headquarters of our enterprises have stayed in Hong Kong to monitor their operations, do design, marketing, developing new markets, etc. Therefore, they still form a very important part of Hong Kong's economy. Globalization of economy is a trend that cannot be reversed. We have to consolidate our foundation and enhance our competitiveness so as to receive future challenges. The return of industries may not suit each and every industry. We must move towards high-tech industries, protect our intellectual property, and develop our brand names and accreditation services and testing services. Automation to enhance design and innovation, safety, guarantee, and brand name developments, etc., must be emphasized. We must emphasize our established advantages so that our industrial products can have more high values. Then we'll become the quality assurance of mainland products. We should go beyond Hong Kong and develop overseas markets. All along, human resources and land resources are the two hindrances for the return of industries. We have to compete with other industries for land resources and human resources. So it's not easy to have the industries moved back to Hong Kong. Many factory buildings have been put to other uses. Some factory buildings have been deserted. Some factory buildings have become display rooms and exhibition venues, or even mini go-downs, studios for bands, youth training centers, or even subdivided units. The government must have long-term policies for industries, and how industry should be supported should also be studied. The restriction on industrial land sites should be lifted. At present, we have 3 industrial estates. The government must prepare for a 4th, and to make full use and good use of the land along the frontier or the boundary. And then on Lantau Island, we should develop logistics industries so that we can become an industrial hub in the region. And then for high-end technology, we need more talents and professionals. So there must be land sites for R&D activities and lift the restrictions on manpower. We're now in a manpower shortage situation. For construction, medical and healthcare, catering, etc., the situation is worst. The government should adopt a multi-pronged approach to release more human resources and provide more vocational training programs to encourage young people to join these industries. Apart from land resources and appropriate assistance, the industries would like the government to provide hardware and software, including tax concessions and other ancillary facilities. Together with the industries, the government should study how local industries can be developed and to invite more high-value-added industries to set up businesses in Hong Kong. We should also promote innovation and technology and diversify our industries to prevent Hong Kong from having a unilateral approach for industrial developments. Dr. Lam Tai Fai. Mr. President, the background of Mr. Martin Liu is that he's a lawyer. But just now his remarks showed his in-depth knowledge of industries. I really admire him. Today, Mr. Chung Kwok-pan is moving this motion to encourage industries to move back to Hong Kong. We should commend his courage. But I don't know whether the government will agree with him and recognize his effort and support him. I don't know whether members from the industrial sector will also support him. Just look at Mr. Andrew Leung, another representative from the industrial sector, has deleted most of the contents of Mr. Chung Kwok-pan's motion. So are all industrialists in support of you, Mr. Chung Kwok-pan? You can think about it. All along, the SARG, in terms of industrial developments, have adopted a disregarding attitude. I think the government has turned a deaf ear to public advice and advice from the industrial sector. The government is not committed to industrial development. In the past years, there's no mention in the policy addresses of industrial development. The government want the industries to survive on their own or to wither on their own. The government considers that our industries are sunset industries. So it's really courageous for Mr. Chung Kwok-pan to move that industries be moved back to Hong Kong. But then we don't have policies to develop industries. If industries move back to Hong Kong, the government will have a headache and nothing can be done. I've been in industries for over 2 decades. So for this motion to suggest that industries be moved back to Hong Kong, I really have to think twice about that. Without support from the government, should we move our industries back to Hong Kong? The mainland market is so big, it's so near to us. Why should our industries come back to Hong Kong? Are we going to give up the big market on the mainland? The European and American markets are diminishing. Why should we move industries back to Hong Kong? Because of low land premium? No, land is so expensive, we cannot set up factories. And because of the dual harsh measures, we have to pay double stamp duty for a factory building. Are our electricity and water cheap? Do we have a prospect to move our industries back to Hong Kong? If we move our industries back to Hong Kong, there'll be increased costs. Relocation will cost us a great deal of money. And if you give up your factories on the mainland, what prospect do you have in Hong Kong? So this is very realistic. So we should not be superficial in our considerations and deliberations. Still, our industries have a prospect. After the handover, the industries on the mainland and those in Hong Kong had experienced integration. So there's a prospect on the mainland. No matter how land resources and human resources are expensive on the mainland, they're still cheaper than those in Hong Kong. And mainland policies are different from Hong Kong policies, no matter how strict they are. The mainland market is big. What advantages do we have in Hong Kong? Members mentioned design, accreditation and testing, marketing and sales, exhibition, and so forth. These are professional competitiveness. So we have to combine the competitiveness on both sides and be complementary to each other. We should formulate policies to link up the advantages and competitiveness on both sides. These competitiveness and advantages are not enjoyed by other jurisdictions. For example, Singapore, it does not have a motherland as the hinterland. Therefore, outdated tax laws have to be reviewed. The Chinese market is so big, we should upgrade our industries. We should think of our domestic market, but Section 39E of the Inland Revenue Ordinance has not been reviewed, suffocating transformation and upgrading, such that we cannot improve our processing industries. Otherwise, we may be chased by the Inland Revenue Department for tax that we owe them. The mainland market is so big. There are a lot that we can do. So we should review our tax law so that we can make use of the hinterland on our motherland. Given the developments on mainland China, we should share in their fruits. The mainland market is so big, we shouldn't turn elsewhere. Other jurisdictions do not have this advantage. So why don't we think about the mainland market? Why should we move our industries back to Hong Kong? It's not necessary to do so. Of course, the role of the government is not just to amend 39E of the Inland Revenue Department. In terms of our design industry, production industry, if we want to sell our products to overseas markets, we need exhibition venues. We should allow SMEs to have opportunities to exhibit their products and sell their products. Talent training is another aspect, such that we have new blood for our industries. So long as we have new blood, our industries will have a prospect. Therefore, here, I dare not oppose a return of Hong Kong's industries. Thank you.
Mr. Wong Kok Heng, in his motion, Mr. Chung Kwok-pan wants to rebuild the brand effect of Made in Hong Kong. Well, it's not that simple. We should do more. It's an invention. Scientific invention is a primary force for productivity. In protecting Hong Kong's inventions, how much has been done by the government? The Secretary said the government should be proactive. President, when the Secretary assumed his office in the last term, I said we should have protection for original design. And he did look into this, as promised. But in this year's policy address, in our discussion of the policy address, the Secretary said in the briefing that it will be actively looked into so that in 2016, 2017, we'll consider the introduction of a system on original design. So this is not proactive enough. I gave you a spring couple during the Lunar New Year to advocate for the immediate implementation or introduction of the system on original design. Why? Because if we wait until 2016, 2017, before we have the active study into the introduction of a system on original design, well, it's certainly not good enough. There will be a change of administrations in 2016 and 2017, and there's also the transition between two terms of LegCo here. I'm concerned that because of the timing, the system will be postponed and delayed. We want to protect original design. Innovators, scientists in Hong Kong should have their patents protected. Such a system would be affording patent protection to these inventors. And the inventions can be applied in production. If Hong Kong has such a system, it would be very beneficial, very useful in attracting industries to come back to Hong Kong. If we look at other Asian economies, our neighbors, the brand name effect on innovation is a competitive market. We are lagging behind Singapore by 10 years. They already have this system on original grant of patents. They have a fast-track system called PPH, so that applications can be expedited, so that manufacturing can be done very quickly. So many enterprises have attracted to this system, and the development in Singapore is very fast. If we look at our neighbor, Macau, our SAR was set up in 1997. The Macau SAR was set up 2 years afterwards. The Macau SAR government introduced this original grant patent system in 2000. The Macau SAR government has set up a IP bureau, and the assessment of original grant patent application has been outsourced to the national authority. Patent owners which have already been given the patent right by the national patent authority can apply for their rights to be extended to Macau. And that is to say, when they get their application approved, their rights in all aspects are protected. If there's a deprivation or copying of such original grant patent, court proceedings can be initiated in Macau to pursue and claim damages. At present, we don't have a system in Hong Kong. One has to go to the UK to seek the grant and then come back to Hong Kong for registration. And if there's a violation of your patent right, you have to start your law proceedings in the UK, while in the meantime, the infringement will continue. And as a result, the invention is not afforded good protection. If the government still insists that in 2016 and 2017 there will be an active study into the possible introduction of such a system in Hong Kong, how can we offer good protection to our inventors? Without such a system, how can we ensure that such inventions will be applied in Hong Kong? And how can we make sure that Hong Kong inventions will become Hong Kong brands? So I hope the Secretary will actively respond to my suggestion and to launch the relevant procedure as soon as possible. I hope within your term you'll be able to reach this milestone for Hong Kong, and you'll be able to contribute to our society in this way within your term. Mr. Albert Chan, in the past 20-odd years, we have seen the rise and fall of many industries, and many SMEs have been vanquished because of bad government policies. Those factories doing the bleaching, electroplating, the textile, and spinning, and so on and so forth, therefore vanish. And I'm so sad to see the disappearance of the lot pond at the Yam Mall. It's a very special industry. It's certainly good looking. If you go to a lot pond, you can fish, you can do things. So it's an industry with special characteristics, and a lot costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. It disappeared. It was the time when Mr. Donald Tsang was the financial secretary. I asked whether it could be reprovisioned. He was so bold in asserting that these sunset industries might as well be gone. Well, so what's wrong with giving them support? If I persuaded him to set up a winery, maybe he would be more receptive. So ignored by directors of bureaus and other secretaries, they disappeared. and because of the need to resume land to build luxurious apartments, well, the ironworks in Chunwan was sacrificed. The ironworks produce special parts for ships, and there was a need to make the molds so as to produce the parts in order to support the shipping industry. In the 60s and 70s, such ironworks were very important in supporting the maintenance and repair of ships. The government wanted to resume land. I went to see the lands department, the industry department, to ask if land could be provided for reprovisioning. They said there's no such government policy. You might want to find your own sites, but they cannot be reprovisioned in a factory building, and they just the mode of operation was such that they would set up a furnace along a slope, and then they operated there. And then there's a Chinese medicinal wine factory in Chunwan. Again, the land was resumed and the factory was gone. And they use waters coming down from the hill for the production of medicinal wine. And then there's another sad story of a Wake factory building. Because of the need to build West Rail, the whole building was demolished, but the compensation has not yet been fully paid. Some factory owners committed suicide. The government just couldn't care less. There were 600 factories there. It's a small community of its own. Different factories may be producing different commodities, but together as a community they could fulfill complicated orders. And there are factories producing the special products, and they are all gone. The only one was Shilwing Steel Works. It was allowed to build luxurious residential developments in situ, and then another site was given to reprovision the factory. Why not do the same to other factories? I think special treatments are afforded to those which enjoy special relationship with the government. And I'm saying that SMEs have been destroyed because of ignorance and the shameless policies of the government. Some of them committed suicide because of the misery it has created. And when I talk to the officials, they reacted very much like what Mr. So is doing now. And what I see is a poker face. Don't think that you are above all of us and ignored our livelihood. Presidents, over the years, I've asked time and again for the government's attention to the development of high value-added industries. Some years ago, there is 20-odd%. It's just 1% something for our GDP share accounted for by the industries. Under the wrong policy of Stone, many industries have been destroyed. We have many potential industries as watches and clocks, jewelry, design, TCM, and so on and so forth. Hong Kong can be a very good manufacturing base for these industries so that people have more job opportunities and people will have more choices. They don't have to be in the financial services or real estate services, we have to revive our high value added industries.
Mr. Albert Ho, Mr. President, 30 years ago, since the opening up and economic reform policy of the mainland China, the geopolitics and the economic environment of Hong Kong had seen great drastic changes. Many factories migrated to the mainland. That was an inevitable trend. But then the administration, under such circumstances, should be forward-looking, should adopt a broader vision for the sake of industrial development in Hong Kong in the future and the long-term economic development, and make appropriate planning. Unfortunately, in early 90s, when there were suggestions of diversifying industries and formulating industrial policies, these suggestions have been made for more than 2 decades, and yet nothing has been implemented. And over the past 20 years, we have seen the dwindling of the industrial sector in Hong Kong, and we were unable to transform and upgrade our industries. For the remaining industries struggling to survive because of infrastructure and new developments, land resumption took place and they were oppressed, and in the end they couldn't survive. Mr. Albert Chan quoted some examples, and I also witnessed Wah Kei, the Wah Kei incident, and it was really sad. Today, if there is a chance for us to encourage the return of the industrial sector, we should focus on the high technology, high value added industries. Investment is necessary. We should invest in education, in equipment, in the training of manpower. Hong Kong also enjoys some advantages. For example, we have a free economy. We should be able to facilitate the development of emerging industries which attach importance to R&D and creativity and design. We are in a place where we have quality assurance. We are still developing the testing and certification services. So we should develop our brand, and we're able to assure the quality of our products. Toy and watch and jewelry, medicine. I think it is unreasonable to say that there is no potential for the development of these sectors. Of course, if you want to promote industrial development, you should broaden the economic base. You should create more job opportunities. But at the same time, we need a committed administration to formulate good policies. My colleagues have spoken on the series of policies. There should be land support, there should be proper planning, there should be more industrial estates, science park or eco park to assist the development of these industries by, for example, offering concessionary rent. There should be policies to support R&D and for industries that could create more jobs and offer more potential. Tax concessions should be given. Of course, the administration should not favor any particular enterprise, but if there are concessionary measures, and then we should welcome any enterprise that fulfills the criteria for such concessionary measures. There should also be loans available for industrial design and also to encourage them to invest in R&D. And as far as tertiary institutions concerned, academic research is also very important for the industrial and engineering departments in tertiary institutions. They often collaborate with the private sector in developing and researching new products. We need to create a critical mass for capitalists to work with academia and research personnel in institutions. We also need to have good transport infrastructure. The administration should be able to provide sufficient exhibition venues to promote products in the local as well as overseas market. These are what the administration should do. On the whole, Hong Kong and the mainland and overseas, we should foster integration among these markets and to promote the formation of a production line with Hong Kong as the center, so that Hong Kong can be developed into a strong industrial base. And we need a committed government to do that, to formulate policies. And of course, we need to have a government which is accepted and has the people's mandate. So unless we have elected government, I don't have much hope. Mr. Charles Mok. Soon after reunification, the Hong Kong government had been stressing that the economic restructuring was taking place, and there was the financial crisis, and yet Hong Kong people still focused only on speculating in the in the stock market and the property market. And even the southern China was changing. And if we don't make any changes, how much more could we enjoy our advantages? So I support Mr. Felix Chung's motion, because this is not only a problem with the industrial sector in Hong Kong, this is also the problem of other industries in Hong Kong. I don't know if you remember originally what CEPA was for. Originally, it was said to create opportunities for the manufacturing sector. There was a list of hundreds of products which, if manufactured in Hong Kong, could tap the mainland market without paying any customs duty. In the end, nobody paid attention to the list. Everybody focused on the services sector, and all the factory owners moved the factories up to the mainland, and in the end, the manufacturing sector did not benefit from it. CEPA creating jobs through CEPA had proven to be a failure. If work is outsourced to third parties and outsiders, Hong Kong, instead of taking up the task itself, we would be lagging even farther behind. We should create jobs other than those in the retail industry. We need a diversification of industries in Hong Kong in order to better help the middle class in the long run. On the contrary, over the past decade or two, Singapore has invested heavily in the manufacturing sector, and similar to the services industry, it serves as an important economic pillar. In 2013, manufacturing sector accounted for 28% of the total GDP, which was 1/5 of the total GDP of Singapore. And Singapore offered financial incentives foreign enterprises to set up plants in Singapore. They even had plants manufacturing parts for aircrafts. Now we put the blame on to the lack of land. Under the high land price policy, we see that we don't have sufficient industrial land. Even the rental for office space are rocket high. When we talk about diversifying our industries, we should focus on developing the technology needed by the next generation. As mentioned by Dr. Kenneth Leung, we should focus on the high technology, high value adding, low pollution industries which had no requirement for site area. I think the administration should actively optimize the utilization of resources, and there should also the government should also encourage the return of the industrial sector and help them transform and upgrade, just like the United States. This is a major policy of the Obama administration. Starting from 2010, they have started to encourage the enterprises in doing so. And last week, I bought this tie in the United States. It's a UK brand. I thought it was made in China, but then it was made in US. And the US government also invested heavily in high-tech development like 3D printing, etc., in order to lower production costs so that it can combine with technology. This year in the policy address, we see that the government is committed to implement measures before the setting up of the Innovation Technology Bureau. However, these measures are not enough. The administration should expedite this progress in deploying more resources to boost manpower, provide land support, etc. More importantly, there should be policies to improve the vicious circle. Mr. Sin Chung-kai's amendment talks about reserving sites for industrial estates, more industrial estates. And for Yuen Long and Tai Po industrial estates, the occupancy rate is over 90%. So some factories some operators should be assisted with upgrading and transforming so that they can move out of the industrial estates and vacate the space for others. And high polluting operations should not be encouraged to minimize nuisance to the neighborhood. On the whole, to revitalize the industrial sector, the manufacturing sector is one target, and also IT. The government should formulate a 5-year or 10-year policy for these industries, and the government should gauge which industries enjoy the biggest potential in the future. There should also be a policy combining the industrial sector with IT sector. This should serve as the direction, just like any other country. This should be the core, and this is what Hong Kong should do. The Hong Kong government will submit the proposal to establish the Innovation and Technology Bureau soon. I hope that the administration will seriously consider these suggestions, how Hong Kong can make use of technology in promoting the diversification of industries, in particular to create quality job opportunities by helping certain industrial sectors, including the manufacturing sector. Does any other member wish to speak?
Mr. Leung Kwok-hong.
各位主席，
President, I bumped into Mr. Greg So in the antechamber. He asked me, "Are you going to speak?" I said yes, because I want to give you a scolding. Of course, I was joking. I have no grudges against him, so why would I want to give him a scolding? But he is an official is now representing the administration, so never mind, even if I know him well, I'm going to give you a scolding. Sometimes other members also give him a very harsh scolding. Why am I speaking? Because members are always very kind. They say it is difficult to make a living in Hong Kong, and even if people have a job, the salary is low. Mr. Greg So told me, look, there is almost full employment in Hong Kong. In terms of economics, it means we have full employment. You are correct. So why do we want industries to come back? Why are they wanting to come back? It is, of course, because it is better to work in Hong Kong than elsewhere. Those who operate businesses, when they want to come back, they want to have a better time. And of course, the governance of the administration should work for the benefit of the majority of the people. In other words, when they come back, they can make more money, then yes, it is good, but should also be good for the employees, the workers. But think about the example cited by C.Y. Leung. He said, I was in the mainland, and I was in the streets, and I met up with this person who operated a red wine business. Mr. President, he said it right in front of you, remember? I heard him. And do you think C.Y. Leung was encouraging people to go north to work? Or is he encouraging business to come back to have high value addedness so as to help people make a living here? But he's actually telling people to go north. If you look at the PA of C.Y. Leung, it is announced very close to the budget. So what is important is the budget, not the PA. This is why C.Y. Leung is smart, because no one would take him to task after announcing the PA, but people would take John Zhang to task because he deals with money. Many officials said, if you can't make it in Hong Kong, go back to the mainland and give it a try. So, Mr. Secretary, I want to ask you this question. And on the other hand, you are telling people to come back from the mainland to operate high value-added industries in Hong Kong. So you are talking about such different directions. Mr. President, I said to the Secretary, do you want the vice sector of Dongguan to come down to Hong Kong? Let me tell you, Mr. So, even the vice sector and other people are going back to the mainland. Even sauna parlors have disappeared in Hong Kong because they have moved northwards. Why? Because the Hong Kong government never thought about supporting industries with policies like what we are proposing in the motion today, and that is to encourage industries to come back so we have a more diversified industrial setup. Mr. Secretary, look at Ricky Wong. He has been dealt a big blow by you. You do not give him the go-ahead. And talk about the green industries. Let me ask you this question. Mr. Wong Kam Sing has been talking for long, and then he's telling us that we should buy electricity from the mainland. Instead of creating a green industrial chain in Hong Kong from recycling, reuse, packaging, and sale of the recycled products. No, that is not what he is doing. Mr. Secretary, you are fooling Hong Kong people. Look at the PA by C.Y. Leung. Only rich people are making money in Hong Kong. High-value other industries now have become speculative enterprises by making use of financial tricks. After a lot of speculation, they are going to swallow other industries and enterprises. There is very uneven distribution of wealth in Hong Kong, and that is why. Mr. President, yesterday, Mr. Chan Yuen-han said that it was a waste of time to discuss the PNP ordinance, but today we are wasting time. Mr. Secretary is not having his dinner when we are already past 6 o'clock, and yet he is bound to sit here and listen to us, and yet this is not a binding motion. Now, Mr. Felix Chung is here because he's the mover, or else he would have gone also. If you look at C.Y. Leung, he is complementing CEPA only, so that capital has gone northwards, and mainland capital comes here to grab up or snatch up our property. They are not coming here to set up factories, Mr. President. I think we are just being benevolent and kind here because we want to do something for Hong Kong. But our industrial sector has gone northwards, and therefore it has almost died in Hong Kong. So, Mr. Secretary, can you tell us in your concluding remarks what industries can survive in Hong Kong? Do you have a plan to help them to survive? Do you have a plan to sell land at a lower premium? C.H. Tung said that there should be industrial or science parks, but then in the end he said there was no land. So it's a waste of breath. Does any other member wish to speak? If not, I will ask Mr. Chung Kwok-pan to speak on the amendments.
Thank you, President. 4 members have moved amendments to my original motion, and among them, Mr. Andrew Leung starts by saying that I have failed to refer to the high-value added industries. Actually, in the very first sentence of my motion, I talk about quite a number of enterprises wish to relocate their core departments and high-value added industries back to Hong Kong. In respect of the contents of his speech, they are similar to mine. In particular, he talked about the idea to develop a 4th industrial estate. Mr. Lam Tai-Fai asked me why Mr. Andrew Leung wants to delete a large part of the wording of my motion. Was it because he represents the industrial sector? So this is a contradiction that he tried to delete so a big part of my wording, and then it's strange. Mr. Sin Chung-kai actually moved an amendment to improve my motion. He mentioned some new industries worthy of support, such as a data center, and I think it's good for broadening the industrial base and should be supported. Mr. Kenneth Leung refers to the rezoning, replanning of industrial land. He also mentioned the pharmaceutical industry, and he has also talked about fashion design and manufacturing. Well, actually, this is my industry. I thank him for mentioning that this industry could well be developed in Hong Kong. And Ms. Chan Yuen-han has also moved an amendment. From time, usually the labor sector and the business sector may not see eye to eye, but he talked about the development of the fashion industry. So it's not necessarily true that the labor sector would be in opposition vis-à-vis the business sector. So I can support this amendment as well.
Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development. Thank you, Mr. President, and I thank over 20 members who have spoken on the motion on encouraging the return of the industrial sector for development to make Hong Kong's industries more diversified. I thank them for their valuable views. Over the past year, for the various initiatives and measures rolled out by the government, they showed our commitment and our active attitudes towards developing the economy. We don't agree with the motion in which it was said that the government shows no support to industrial development and there is no policy on supporting the development of new industries. Now, the motion mentions making Hong Kong's industries more diversified. In fact, we share the same policy objective. Last month, the Financial Secretary, in his budget, rolled out the strategies on widening and deepening the 4 traditional economic pillars and also initiatives and policies on supporting the emerging industries and innovation technology industries. In this year's policy address, the Chief Executive also mentioned the policy initiatives in supporting the over 10 industries. The commitments of the government can be shown. For example, on creative industries, last year the administration injected $3 million into Create Smart to support this scheme in subsidizing projects conducive to the development of the creative industries. And also, the former Hollywood Road Police Married Quarters have been transformed into the PMQ with the focus on design industry to support the development of the creative industries. The administration has also set up a working group on IP trading to study how Hong Kong can be promoted to be an IP trading hub in the region. On innovation technology, the government will expand and fine-tune the subsidy limit and scope of the Innovation Technology Fund and increase the rebate level of the R&D cash rebate scheme and extend the operation period of the 4 R&D centers and start work on the phase 3 of the Science Park. Mr. Felix Chung, in his motion, proposes that we should encourage the return of the industrial sector. And Hong Kong, we keep all options open and we are happy to seek views from the sector as well as from the public. Hong Kong has limited land and manpower resources. Some industries which require high land requirement with low value addedness and intensive labor may not be conducive to a long-term development of our economy. We must not just rely on the return of the traditional industries. We want to diversify the industries. We'll review the trend, operational costs, and compare our advantages and make appropriate assessments on encouraging the return of the industries. We're happy to see that the sector is minded to move the core departments and high-value processes back of traditional industries back to Hong Kong to promote the economic development in Hong Kong. I believe that traditional industries can put their resources in developing their products and design, brand promotion and management, or research into high value added or high technology projects. And then through upgrading and transformation together with the Hong Kong brand, it can help promote the long-term healthy development of the industries. Now, regarding Mr. Felix Chung's motion, amendments moved by members, there are suggestions on planning of land and industrial sites. The Town Planning Board conduct regular review and revision on to the plans, and I understand that the Planning Department has conducted a number of rounds of area assessment of industrial land in the territory, and when conducting this such an assessment in 2009, the Planning Department, in relation to the territory-wide industrial land demand, a forecast was made, and the Planning Department also assessed the impact on the manufacturing sector if industrial land is converted to other purposes. The proposal involves converting 13 hectares of industrial land to OUB, that is other unspecified purposes annotated business, to preserve the relevant sites for economic purposes. Now, to provide the appropriate environment for cultivating talents and encouraging business startup, we need long-term. It is crucial for the purpose of long-term development of various industries. The Hong Kong government subsidizes the Hong Kong Design Center, Cyberport, and the Science Park, which provides incubation programs to help business startups. We also have a number of measures to help SMEs to promote their healthy development and enhance their competitiveness, and in turn help facilitate the economic growth in Hong Kong. On innovation technology, many members talked about its importance in this regard. We support R&D and we encourage enterprises to make use of energy in technology to enhance their productivity. Mr. Andrew Leung's amendment talked about promoting innovation technology and R&D. Mr. Sin Chung-kai, in his amendment, proposes widening the use of ITF, and more funds should be injected. Over the past few years, the government has improved individual plans under the fund to enhance more support for technology transfer and applied research. And the Financial Secretary in the budget last month announced that the Enterprise Support Scheme under the ITF would substitute the Small Enterprise Research Assistance Program, CRAP, to further enhance this fund. Ms. Chan Yuen-han's amendment talks about vocational and skills training courses, and at present the Employment Retraining Board offers a number of in-service and retraining courses. The VTC, Vocational Training Council, also through affiliated organizations provide comprehensive pre-vocational and in-service training to cultivate talents across different sectors. Apart from existing policies and initiatives, the Chief Executive also personally chairs the Economic Development Council Commission meeting, EDC, which takes a high-level interdepartmental and cross-sectoral approach in studying the advantages and opportunities facing Hong Kong, and on studying how to broaden our economic foundation and to formulate overall strategies and policies to facilitate long-term development. We look forward to the recommendations of the EDC so that the administrations can make appropriate consideration and implement these recommendations. Mr. Wong Kwok-pan also talks about the original grant patent system, and I thank members for their concern and their support for this original grant patent system policy. The colleagues of my bureau had spared no effort in this regard. On the 6th of December 2013, we formally signed the relevant cooperation agreement with the mainland counterpart, and the IP ministry on the mainland agreed that in relation to the patent application and the cultivation of talents, they will provide technical support. However, we also need to follow up work in a number of areas together with supporting facilities before we can fully implement the original grant patent system. The follow-up work may involve resolving technical and practical and legal issues, and funding applications would be necessary. We anticipate that work will not be completed until 6 months later. Depending on the progress of other areas of work and the legislative process, our preliminary timetable is to implement the original grant patent system by early 2016-17. Now, on the whole, there are a number of specific measures and initiatives from the government to help industries. On the one hand, it bolsters traditional pillar industries. At the same time, it also supports emerging industries. Our target is that through these policies and initiatives, we can promote diversified development of industries. As Mr. Vincent Fang just now mentioned, we're beginning to yield results. For example, creative industries is making a greater percentage of our contribution to GDP gradually, and the land resources are valuable in Hong Kong, and the administration has a responsibility to cooperate in terms of land planning in a flexible manner to cope with the needs of various sectors. We're happy to seek more views from members and the sector.
Mr. Andrew Leung, please move your amendments. President, I move that Mr. Chung Kwok-pan's motion be amended. I now propose the question to you, and that is that the amendment moved by Mr. Andrew Leung to Mr. Chung Kwok-pan's motion be passed. I now put the question to you as stated. Would those in favour please raise their hands? Mr. Chung Kwok-pan claims a division. The division bell will be rung for 5 minutes.
開始表決。
Voting begins. Members, please verify your votes. If there's no question, voting is closed and the results displayed. FC members, 24 present, 15 for, 9 against, no abstention. GC members, 21 present, 9 for, 10 against, 1 abstained. The question is not agreed by majority, respectively of each of the two groups of members. I declare the amendment negatived. Mr. Andrew Leung. President, I move that in the event of further divisions being claimed at this meeting in respect of the motion on encouraging the return of the industrial sector for development to make Hong Kong's industries more diversified, that the Council should proceed to the division after the division bell has been rung for 1 minute. Does anyone want to speak to, on this motion? But I now put the question to you as stated. Would those in favour please raise their hands, and those against? I think the question is agreed by majority respective of each of two groups of members. I declare the motion passed, and I direct that in the event of further divisions being claimed at this meeting in respect of the motion on encouraging the return of the industrial sector for development to Hong Kong to make Hong Kong's industries more diversified, the division bell, the Council should proceed to the division after the division bell has been rung for 1 minute. Mr. Sin Chung-kai. President, I move that Mr. Sin Chung Kwok-pan's amendment be amended. I now propose the question to you, and that is that the amendment moved by Mr. Sin Chung-kai to Mr. Chung Kwok-pan's motion be passed. I now put the question to you as stated. Will those in favour please raise their hand? Those against please raise their hands. I think Mr. Abraham Shah claims a division. The division bell will run for 1 minute. Voting begins. Members, please check your votes. If there's no question, voting is closed and the results displayed. FC members, 24 present, 23 for, no objection, 1 abstained. GC members, 22 present, 24, no one objects to the motion, 1 abstained. I think the question is agreed by majority respectively of each of the two groups of members. I declare the amendment passed. Mr. Kenneth Leung, as Mr. Sin Chung-kai's amendment has been passed, I've given leave for you to amend your amendment. President, I move that Mr. Chung Kwok-pan's motion as amended by Mr. Sin Chung-kai be further amended by my revised amendment. And I'll propose the question to you, and that is that Mr. Kenneth Leung's amendment to Mr. Chung Kwok-pan's motion as amended by Mr. Sin Chung-kai be passed. And I'll put the question to you as stated. Would those in favour please raise their hands? Those against please raise their hands. I think the question is agreed by majority. Mr. Cheung Wah-fong, do you wish to claim a division? I think the question is agreed by majority respectively of each of the two groups of members, that is those returned by FCs and those returned by GC through direct election who are present. I declare the amendment passed. Ms. Chan Yuen-han, as the amendments of Mr. Sin Chung-kai and Mr. Kenneth Leung have been passed, I have given leave for you to revise the terms of your amendment. President, I move that Mr. Chung Kwok-pan's motion as amended by Mr. Sin Chung-kai and Mr. Kenneth Leung be further amended by my revised amendment. I wish to speak on this. please move your amendment and please explain what has been revised. Thank you for your reminder, President. President, I move that Mr. Chung Kwok-pan's motion as amended by Mr. Sin Chung-kai and Mr. Kenneth Leung be further amended by my revised amendment. President, I agree to the amendments moved by the members. It's important that we have complementary support measures for our industries. Our industries are so weak, and if they return, there will be a gap. I think you must use the 3 minutes to explain the difference between your original amendment and the revised amendment. Precisely, that's the point. That's about manpower. I'm the only one who mentioned this. Sorry, you have to tell us that the revised amendment is different to the original amendment. And you can tell us what is different. You should not be speaking on what is already in your original amendment. I move that Mr. Chung Kwok-pan's motion be amended by my revised amendment, and that's all. I now propose the question to you, and that is that Mr. Chan Yuen-han's amendment to Mr. Chung Kwok-pan's motion as amended by Mr. Sin Chung-kai and Mr. Kenneth Leung be passed. And I put the question to you as stated. With those in favor, please raise their hands. Those against, please raise their hands. I think the question is agreed by a majority respectively of each of the 2 groups of members, that is those returned by FCs and those returned by GCs through direct elections, who are present. I declare the amendment passed. Mr. Chung Kwok-pan, you may now reply. You have 4 minutes and 24 seconds. Thank you, President. Well, we are all tired after 3 days of meeting, and still we have 20 members who spoke on this motion, but it's lucky that we can adjourn by 7 p.m. and then we can have a rest. Many members have referred to industrial land sites. The Secretary is concerned about how we can find so many sites. If we relax the building height of our industrial estates, we have many times the sites available. It's not difficult. Just talk to Mr. Paul Chan, Secretary for Development. Mr. Lam Tai-Fai said I'm courageous in proposing the return of industries. He represents the industrial sector. We shouldn't be that pessimistic. There are some industries that can be developed in Hong Kong, such as environmental protection, the fashion. So since you represent the industrial sector, Mr. Lam, you should not be so pessimistic. And then the mention is made about courage. I hope the Secretary will be courageous too to bring back the industries. If you dare to do the catwalk for a fashion show, I will follow suit. I hope the Secretary would revise the industrial policy. And I'll put a question to you, and that is that the motion moved by Mr. Chung Kwok-pan, as amended by Mr. Sin Chung-kai, Mr. Kenneth Leung, and Ms. Chan Yuen-han, be passed. Will those in favor please raise their hands? Those against, please raise their hands. I think the question is agreed by a majority respectively of each of the 2 groups of members, that is those returned by FCs and those returned by GCs, through direct elections who are present. I declare the motion as amended passed. I now adjourn the Council until 11 a.m. on Wednesday, the 26th of March, 2014.